In the summer of 1942, the British Eighth Army faced a critical situation after their defeat at the Battle of Gazala. Rommel's Panzer Army Africa was advancing, threatening the Suez Canal and even the Persian oil fields. The British commander, Claude Auchinleck, took direct control of Eighth Army. Instead of retreating to form defensive lines at Mersa Matruh, he decided to fortify a new line near a small railway halt known as El Alamein. Positioned between the Mediterranean Sea in the north and the Qattara Depression, a natural barrier in the south, this location created a narrow corridor that limited Axis forces' maneuverability. This strategic bottleneck allowed the British to halt the Axis advance at the First Battle of El Alamein. With both sides regrouping, the Eighth Army began preparations for a counteroffensive that would become one of the most iconic battles of World War II. The upcoming clash was marked by brutal, close-quarters fighting, reminiscent of the trench warfare of the First World War. The Second Battle of El Alamein would be a pivotal moment, signaling a shift in favor of the Allies. By the latter half of 1942, Axis forces in North Africa were stretched thin. The German High Command prioritized the battle for Stalingrad, and Panzer Army Africa only received limited support. Axis supplies had to be shipped across the contested Mediterranean and then transported vast distances to the front lines, causing severe shortages of fuel, food, and water. Malta, still held by the Allies, further disrupted supply routes. Axis forces lacked the resources needed for a decisive offensive or a sustained defense. As Axis strength waned, the Eighth Army gained a new leader, Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery. Montgomery brought fresh reinforcements and supplies, threatening to shift the balance in the Allies' favor. Aware of this, Rommel launched a final attack in a desperate attempt to capture Alexandria before the reinforcements arrived. However, his exhausted troops were repelled at the Battle of Alam el Halfa. This setback set the stage for Montgomery's counterattack, but instead of acting immediately, he took time to build up his forces and train them rigorously. As the Eighth Army grew stronger, Montgomery assembled a multinational force, with soldiers from India, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, Greece, and Rhodesia. American-built tanks like the Sherman and British weaponry provided the Allies with a technological edge. The growing strength of Montgomery's forces created a daunting challenge for the Axis defenders, who had limited manpower and supplies. Rommel prepared for the Allied assault by constructing extensive defensive positions. Known as the Devil's Gardens, these consisted of thousands of anti-tank and anti-personnel mines, protected by trenches, barbed wire, and anti-tank guns. He placed infantry on the front lines to absorb the initial attack, with armored reserves stationed behind. However, due to fuel shortages, Rommel's armored units would be hard-pressed to redeploy if needed. In Rommel's absence due to illness, his deputy took command, but the defenses remained formidable obstacles. Montgomery prepared his men for the impending battle, training them in night fighting, mine clearance, and building their confidence in victory. Montgomery himself stayed in an Italian general's caravan, boosting morale and fostering a sense of camaraderie among the troops. Montgomery's battle plan relied on his numerical and firepower superiority. While one division launched a feint in the south, the main assault would break through in the north, clearing a path through the minefields for the armor to advance. To confuse the enemy, dummy tanks were deployed in the south, while real tanks in the north were camouflaged. Additionally, the Allies had gained an intelligence advantage, intercepting crucial Axis communications and understanding the supply issues plaguing Rommel's forces. On October 23, the Second Battle of El Alamein commenced with a massive artillery bombardment that echoed across the desert. Engineers moved forward to clear the minefields, though the depth of these obstacles slowed their progress, forcing the infantry and supporting armor to endure heavy Axis fire. The next day, news arrived that Rommel's deputy had died, and Rommel himself was returning to the front. By this time, the Allied forces were beginning to make headway, breaking through the minefields and engaging in intense tank battles. However, Montgomery's original plan was faltering due to the fierce Axis resistance and the difficulty of clearing paths through the minefields. Recognizing the need for a shift, Montgomery launched Operation Supercharge, targeting a weak point in the Axis defenses. The battle reached a peak on November 2, as British and New Zealand infantry fought their way forward under cover of artillery. Despite the intense resistance, the Allies' superior numbers and firepower allowed them to break through the Axis lines. As the Allied tanks cleared the last minefields, a large-scale tank battle ensued. Although the Axis forces fought tenaciously, they could not match the relentless Allied onslaught. The Second Battle of El Alamein ended in a decisive victory for the Allies, marking a turning point in the North African campaign and setting the stage for further successes in the Mediterranean.